This is how to play Cat Sudoku Summer Festival from Sunrise Tornado. This is a 1 to 4 player game where players attempt to manipulate a shared 3x3 grid of cards to their favor while also following basic Sudoku rules. The game consists of 36 cards, numbered 1 through 9 in 5 different colors. There's also 1 meeple and 10 reserve tokens. To set up the game, first create the draw deck. In a 1 to 2 player game, remove all 9 purple cards and place them in the box. Skip this step for a 3 to 4 player game. Shuffle all remaining cards together, then place this draw deck within reach of all players. In a 1 to 3 player game, remove 2 cards from the top of the draw deck and place them face down in the box. They will not be used. For a 4 player game, remove 3 cards instead of 2. Flip the top card of the draw deck and place it in the center of the play area. This card will act as the center of the 3x3 grid that will be built over the course of the game. Place the meeple on top of this card. Next, each player draws cards depending on the number of players. In a 1 to 2 player game, draw 3 cards. In a 3 to 4 player game, draw 2 cards. These cards are then placed in front of each player face up, creating their reserve. Next, all players will receive 1 reserve token. The player who most recently played Cat Sudoku is the starting player, and play continues to the left. On a player's turn, they must perform 1 mandatory action, and if possible, they may choose a second optional action. For their mandatory action, the active player draws the top card of the draw deck. They must then choose to place the card either face up in front of them in their reserve, or face up in the shared 3x3 grid. To place the card in the shared grid, it must follow these placement rules. The card may be placed on top of another card already in the grid, as long as the existing card doesn't already have the meeple token on top of it. The card may not be the same color or number of any other card in the row or column in which it's placed. However, if it is replacing a card with the same color or number by being placed on top of it, this is allowed. Once a card is played in the grid, the meeple moves to the top of that card. If a player is unable to place a card into the grid, they must place it in their reserve. Optionally, they can choose to put a card in their reserve even if it is able to be placed within the grid. As a second optional action, a player may pay reserve tokens from their reserve to the communal supply to play additional cards. For each additional card from their reserve that they wish to play, 2 reserve tokens must be returned to the supply. A player may play as many cards as they wish as long as they have the reserve tokens to pay for the move. And again, that meeple token is immediately moved to the most recent card that was played in the grid. Players have the opportunity to earn reserve tokens every time they play a card. Each card has a placement rule at the bottom of it. If that placement rule is followed when it's played in the grid, the player that placed the card receives a reserve token from the supply. However, if the reserve token supply is depleted, no more can be earned until a player uses their tokens to play an additional card from their reserve. In addition, players can earn a reserve token by spotting a mistake within the grid. If multiple cards of the same color or number are found in the same row or column, the player who found the mistake can take a reserve token. The error must be found on a turn after it is made. Players may not purposely make an error to collect reserve tokens. And if there are no more reserve tokens, the player can take one from the player who has the most tokens. In the case of a tie for most tokens, the player that spotted the mistake may choose who to take the token from, and then the game continues without correcting the mistake in the grid. Once the last card is drawn from the deck, the player that drew the card finishes their turn and the game ends and scoring begins. Scoring depends on the player count, but in every case, each player will have been assigned a column or row that was their scoring zone. In a solo game, the player scores points for the middle column. In a 2-player game, the first player scores the left column, and the second player scores the right column. For a 3-player game, the first player scores the first column, the second player scores the middle column, and the third player scores the right column. In a 4-player game, each player scores one of the outside columns or rows. Please note that each player will have an overlapping scoring space with each adjacent player. In the basic scoring mode, each card in a player's zone is worth 1 point. For advanced scoring, each player counts the stack of cards in their zone. 0 to 1 cards in the stack scores 0 points. 2 cards in the stack scores 2 victory points. 3 cards in the stack scores 5 victory points. In addition, the stack with the most cards in the player's zone scores 1 point per card in that stack. For both the basic and advanced scoring, Players also tally the cards and reserve tokens in their reserve. The player or players tied for the most reserve tokens in their reserve at the end of the game earn an additional 2 points. However, any cards left in the reserve are -3 points each. The player who earned the most points wins the game. If you're playing solo, you can reference your score with the following: 2 to 5 points, Keen Kitten; 6 to 9 points, Feline Fanatic; 10 to 13 points, Meow Maestro; 14 to 17 points, Temple Treasures; 18 plus points, Sudoku Sensei;